Welcome back into the Dead Arm Sports Podcast, coming at you on Thursday. Got some Thursday night football tonight and got a podcast to preview that, along with other games from the NFL slate. Got the rest of our Bowl Pick'em and, of course, our Drew Locks of the Week. Starting it off with the QOTD gel. We are in the heart of bowl season. I want to know, what's your favorite bowl game that you've watched?
Well, that's a good question. It's been pretty limited.
I mean, no, this is ever.
Oh,
ever. Yes.
Oh,
favorite ones ever.
I mean, the first one that comes to mind, and even though this resulted in a loss for the Badgers, was the Rose Bowl, that Russell Wilson, Monty Ball team, that Rose Bowl where the Badgers lost to TCU. Andy Dalton, Tank freaking Johnson, son of a mother. Literally. Yeah, I mean, that game was absolutely amazing. Result didn't obviously go the Badgers' way, but it was one of the more entertaining games and one of the bigger games in recent Badger history that, I have a lot of, good memories from that game. I was with a lot of people that, some of them that are listening to this show, and to watch that game at a friend's house back during the high school days. So that, I don't know, that game comes to mind, even though it didn't go the way that we wanted it to. It was still really entertaining and a really fun game. So kind of a weird one to pick a loss, but just a really, really fun game.
I have two Rose Bowl ones I want to throw at you. I got 2006 Rose Bowl, USC.
That's the best
Texas.
game of all time. That's the one that came once I stopped talking. That one just came to mind immediately.
Yeah, no, just absolutely nuts. Vince Young running the ball in, just an iconic moment. And I don't know, I can just picture that highlight over and over and over with him diving and just kind of jumping over to the pylon, running over. And yeah,
college Texas legends, a ton of them. Vince, obviously you mentioned Vince Young, Matt Leinart,
Reggae Bush,
Reggae Bush. And that USC defense was loaded too. I mean, linebackers were loaded. They had some nice safety play as well. So really loaded game.
Yeah.
That was probably the best year of NCAA football, the video game as well.
Yes, that was an unbelievable game.
I believe that was with Pat White, Steve Slayton as well in that game, which that was a dynamic duo.
Yep. That was amazing. Honorable mention, 2022 Rose Bowl, Utah, Ohio State last year. Just an absolute back and forth game, and just one that was just fun to watch. And and there's not much more to say other than it was just enjoyable to watch. Just all the scoring, the back and forth, the coming down to the wire of the game. It just, it was.
Who'd have thought Utah could put up points like that? Right? I mean, that was the big surprise, is that they put up so many damn points. It was great.
Yep. And we didn't think really that Ohio State was going to be putting up that many points, because we had the opt-outs last year from Olave and
Garrett Wilson.
So that
was the Jackson Smith and Jigba come out party.
Yep. Yeah, just absolute monster performance from him in that one. But yeah, some good Rose Bowl memories, I guess, from the two of us. Rose Bowls. Moral of the story there. We can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on Facebook at Dead Arm Sports. We are also on YouTube. Type in Dead Arm Sports into that search bar, and you will find us. We monitor that chat throughout our live recordings. Make sure you subscribe and click the bell. That way you know when our live episodes drop. Gel can be found at DasJel. That's at DASJEL. I can be found at DasJPEC. That's at DASJPEC. Can send us in any questions there and hit us up. Subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your favorite listening platform. Send us a screenshot, and we will get you some swag sent out for free. All right, last of our bowl pick'em besides the national championship game, Gel, it is the big games. New Year's 6. We've got the Orange Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Cotton Bowl, Rose Bowl, and the two playoff games, the Fiesta and Peach Bowl, to talk about here. let's kick it off with the Orange Bowl. This one features two orange teams in this one.
It's the ultimate Orange Bowl.
It is the ultimate Orange Bowl. Tennessee and Clemson, two teams that had high hopes at the beginning of the season, tapered off down the stretch. Both teams missed out on that college football playoff, but should be a good game nonetheless. Obviously, Tennessee without star quarterback Hendon Hooker in this one, and Clemson turning over a new leaf to Cade Klubnik in this one. So what are you looking forward to in this one, Jell? And I guess what's your pick?
Yeah, just to, in case for any listeners that did not hear, you mentioned Cade Klubnik is taking over that quarterback spot. DJ Uiagalelei, a.k.a. Ukulele, has transferred to one of our top listeners' current universities over to the Oregon State Beavers. So Uiagalelei has given up his dreams of being a number 1 overall pick after being at Clemson for a few years. And completely, screwing the pooch on that one, but going over to a team that had a really solid season with Oregon State. So hopefully he can kind of right the ship a little bit and end up being a top 4 rounds, I guess, type of a pick.
Other fun fact too, his younger brother committed to the Oregon Ducks during signing day last week too. So a little bit sibling rivalry there with the Oregon State.
You gotta love it. But sticking with the quarterbacks, I mean, Cade, we've seen how much better Clemson looked with Klubnik at QB. I think that he's going to be ready to put on a show and be like, hey, maybe if he goes off, I wouldn't be shocked if he's sitting up there in the top 5 preseason Heisman rankings, because going into next year, because we saw how good he looked all season when he came in, and if he's finally just, it's my job, it's my team. And if he plays the way that he did for a lot of these, relief pitcher type of roles that he did, when he came into these games this season, I think he's going to be up there, at least in the beginning of the Heisman race next season. So I think he'll be plenty motivated, and I got to roll with the Tigers.
Yeah, that's where I'm leaning in this one too. I think Clemson's going to be too much. Like you said, Cade Klubnik has looked awesome when he's come in, and they have looked like a totally different offense than when DJ was in there. And Clemson's defense has been pretty solid. I think they're going to be able to stifle the Tennessee offense a little bit, especially without Hendon Hooker. I'm not sure. Have you heard on Jalen Hyatt or Cedric Tillman at all? I believe Tillman opted out. I think he declared for the draft, but I don't remember seeing anything on Hyatt.
I thought I saw that Hyatt went to the draft as well, but I don't know if that means he'll be playing or not.
Okay.
But I'm like 90% sure I saw Hyatt is going to the draft.
Sounds good. Because obviously if those two guys aren't playing, that pretty much would eliminate Tennessee in my mind in this one, being able to keep up. But I think Clemson's going to be too much. They aren't excited about being in the Orange Bowl and missing out on that playoff after losing to North Carolina in that ACC championship game. But I think ultimately they'll be coming out for this one, try and get a jump start and get Cade Klubnik on the right path to lead them back into the college football playoff next year. And Clemson's going to walk away with this one. Moving into the All-State Sugar Bowl. This one is one that's a little interesting. Alabama, Kansas State. Early on when I saw this matchup, I was like, man, I'm going Kansas State hard on this one. But then we had news that Bryce Young, Will Anderson are going to be playing in this one. So a lot of Alabama stars are going to be out there in this one. And with that in mind, even though Kansas State won that Big 12 championship, Alabama is going to be way too much for them. I think that defense is going to come out and give them trouble. And I think Alabama's offense finds a way as well. Have struggled at times this season, but kind of hard to beat Nick Saban when he's had almost a month to prepare for your team too. So I think they'll be out there and giving Kansas State hell in this one, and got to roll with the Tide. Roll Tide.
I'm going to go Kansas State. Right. Even with probably the top 2 picks in the draft coming back and playing this one, I really like the momentum that Kansas State has right now, especially you obviously mentioned that Big 12 championship title, that game, getting that W. they really impressed me against TCU. I haven't been impressed by Alabama all season. I mean, their losses, yes, they were all 1-point losses, but they also had multiple one possession, or I said 1 point, I meant one possession losses. They also had a bunch of one possession wins. And yes, they're playing in the SEC, which, I mean, obviously top to bottom is the best conference in the country, but I haven't been impressed with Alabama all season. Obviously, the talent favors Alabama, but the talent has favored Bama in the past, especially in non-playoff games, and they've folded. So I think Kansas State, the momentum that they currently have, in combination with the motivation that they will have to win this game, I think that's going to be a huge factor here. I like Kansas State in the major upset.
All right. No, I mean, my heart will be cheering for Kansas State in this one. I mean, that's who I want to win, but ultimately, yeah. But I like the pick. I don't mind it at all. Goodyear Cotton Bowl, your neck of the woods, Gel, at Jerry World. Got the green wave of Tulane taking on the USC Trojans. So you got the non-power 5 school into the New Year's 6 bowl game for this one. USC is going to be too much. I don't see Tulane winning this game. Caleb Williams is going to be playing in this one, should be healthy and recovered on that. And that's enough for me. Even if he doesn't have Jordan Addison there, it's Caleb Williams is going to give him hell.
Caleb Williams is the reason that I am a little bit timid about making this pick, but I'm going to go upset number 2. I'm going with the green wave, baby. I think, again, it's going to come down to motivation. What is USC playing for right now? I mean, they were right there. They were right there to make the playoff until they lost to Utah. I just don't know the motivation factor there for USC, and Tulane's going to obviously come out and try to put on a goddamn show because everybody, I mean, how much Tulane football did you watch this year? How many minutes do you think? Over under much. 20 game minutes.
Under
exactly. So I think they're going to want to put on a show for the country, for the nation. I just don't know the motivation that USC is going to have. Yes, Caleb Williams could very easily absolutely dominate this game, but he might still be working on that gimpy ankle. We saw him at the end of that Utah game, and that injured ankle really limited him quite a bit. So if that's not fully healthy and he's limited to being a pocket quarterback and he doesn't have his weapons, especially if Addison isn't playing, that's going to limit that entire USC offense. I just like the motivation that Tulane's going to have and that USC will not. So green wave, baby. Let's go scuba diving.
Well, I'm just hoping as well that Lincoln Riley, all they've been doing in practice is practicing tackling after that.
Oh my God, that was just atrocious.
We'll see if they've gone back to the fundamentals preparing for this one. Last of the non-college football playoff games have the Rose Bowl, which we had talked about some of our Rose Bowl memories over the past, which were some of our bowl game memories there. But shaping up, this could be a sneaky good game. Penn State kind of low-key in the Big Ten East this year. 2 solid freshman running backs, along with Sean Clifford. And then you got Utah coming off of that Pac-12 championship upset over USC. Coming off of that loss in the Rose Bowl last year to Ohio State. Who you got in this one, Joe?
I got to go with the Utes. I think they're going to right the ship a little bit in the Rose Bowl. They were so close last year, and they're going to want to be eating those roses, holding those roses in their mouth at the end of this game. You know, you mentioned Penn State does have 2 really solid freshman running backs, and the talent is obviously there, but for some reason it seemed like there were games where they just could not get that ground game going. Yeah. And that's where Utah's defense is dominant. I mean, they're dominant on all 3 levels, but they're really, really special against the run game. Sean Clifford certainly doesn't blow me away. I mean, if they're able to beat Caleb Williams, I think that they can handle Sean Clifford. I love James Franklin, but Kyle Whittingham has been doing this for 15 years now with this program. I got to go Utah. I think they're getting another Rose Bowl W and putting another one on Whittingham's mantle.
Yep. I agree with you completely on that one. They're just going to be too much on defense, I think, for Penn State. Penn State's offense is going to have a hard time in this one. You'd mentioned Utah stopped Caleb Williams twice this year. And I mean, yeah, this last time was on a gimpy leg, like you had said, but I would take gimpy leg Caleb Williams over Sean Clifford any day of the week. So he was still out there throwing the ball, and Utah's defense is going to be coming out for this one. I just think that motivation factor of losing that heartbreaker to Ohio State last year is going to be enough for Utah to get them over the edge and knock off Penn State in this one. Moving into the playoffs, got the Verbo Fiesta Bowl. Ay, 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 ay.
That's actually kind of fun. I like that. VRBO is legit.
Yep.
Go rent yourself some nice Fiesta party homes there.
Right. TCU versus Michigan in this one, and Max Duggan playing his last game for Texas Christian, going up against Michigan. Michigan's got that sour taste in their mouth from their defeat last year at the hands of Georgia, and yeah, this one, I think Michigan's going to be too much. As much as I'd like to see TCU's story continue, and they're a fun team to watch, Michigan's going to be too much and too motivated. The only concern I do have, and I've said it a couple weeks back on the pod, Michigan needs to have a strong first half in this one. I think the longer they let TCU hang around in this one, it's going to give them more confidence. We've seen Michigan struggle in the first half of the Big 12 or Big 10 championship game against Purdue and against Ohio State. I mean, Maryland game, what was it, Rutgers? I mean, you name it. Michigan has had a close first half. And I think ultimately you don't want a team like TCU hanging around, gaining confidence, saying that, all right, yeah, we are in this one. Michigan needs to come out pounding with Blake Corum. They need to get some points on the board in the first half and show that, no, we are a full 4-quarter team and not just a second half team.
I guess to just double down on what you said about letting, if they let TCU hang in there, we saw that in the Big 12 championship game. I mean, Kansas State, it's like they had a lead. It felt like the entire game, and at points a 2-possession lead, but every time it looked like Kansas State was about to run away with it, TCU would come back. And then Kansas State would look like they're going to run away with it. TCU would come back and score and then get a turnover and then score again. And now all of a sudden, holy crap, we're going into overtime. So I mean, absolutely, Michigan does need to. I think that it's really important for them to get off to a hot start because this TCU team does show the ability to come back. But Michigan's too big, too strong, too physical. Big Ten team versus, those corn-fed big boys on the offensive and defensive lines of the Michigan Wolverines versus obviously much less physical Big 12 team. I give the edge to Michigan here as well. I think it's going to be a Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards dominance. And all it takes too, we saw this in the Ohio State game. JJ McCarthy gets one. I mean, he showed that he can throw a deep ball. So if one of these Michigan receivers ends up getting open on a deep ball, McCarthy can make that throw, which that was in doubt before that Ohio State game, but he showed that he can hit open receivers way downfield. If TCU has a breakdown in coverage, Michigan can get some easy points. And especially if they do that in the first half, I think Michigan walks away with probably a 10 plus point win here against TCU.
Dope. Moving into our last game here, the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl in Atlanta, Georgia. I guess only question here, Joe, for our listeners, everyone's wondering, does Ohio State even have a chance in this one?
We saw Michigan throw them around. Georgia's going to throw them around even harder. I think there's no question in my mind. Ohio State's going to want to try to show like, hey, we can be a physical team. This Michigan game isn't representative of us. It's like, no, it's been 2 straight years where Michigan has owned you physically. This is who you are. Ryan Day has never been a physical team. I think that Stetson Bennett probably only needs to go for 250, and then they're just going to stuff the ball up the middle on the outside and just run the ball hard. I don't know how these Ohio State receivers are also going to get open. I mean, they run a spread offense, and that allows them to really dominate against other inferior Big Ten opponents. But that spread offense doesn't work as well against the very physical corners that Georgia has. I think Georgia gets this by 3 touchdowns. That would not shock me one bit.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be close either. I think Brock Bowers is going to have a huge day for the Bulldogs. And like you said, I think Georgia's defense is just going to absolutely come out and manhandle Ohio State. I don't see it going. Ohio State, a lot of times too, they like to get the ground game going, Trayvon Henderson, and I don't see them having a lot of room to work in this one. Georgia is going to walk away with this one. I like exactly what you had called with the 3+ touchdowns, and I just don't see a way for Ohio State. I mean, this is in Atlanta too. I mean, Georgia is going to have the home crowd advantage in this one. Ohio State's fans are going to travel well, but ultimately it's going to be too much, I think, for Ohio State to overcome. And we're going to get a Georgia versus Michigan rematch from last year. And I think ultimately those are the 2 best teams. And those are 2 teams that should be in the national championship game. They've been the 2 teams that have been most consistent all season, outside of a couple games here and there. Georgia versus Mizzou, where they had to struggle to overcome the win to get a win there. But this is the 2 best teams, and definitely looking forward to that matchup, which we'll have a preview for you next week, leading into that national championship game. Maybe even do, I believe last year we did some other picks too, as far as some prop bets. Maybe we'll get a little bit of that going on. Moving into the NFL Week 17 preview, before we get into some of those preview games, Gel's got a betting tidbit for all of you gamblers out there.
You want to sing the gambler, Kenny Rogers?
You got to know
when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em. Okay. Denver, Kansas City. Ugly matchup. Right now, Kansas City is a 13.5-point dog. However, there are some really juicy numbers here as to why you would want to bet on an interim head coach in their first game. Since 2010, against the spread, first game for an interim head coach, they are 14-9 against the spread. They're also 14-9 overall, even with 16 of those games. They would be underdogs in 16 of those games. So really nice numbers here to go take the underdog, at least betting against the spread. Now, we also saw this earlier on in the season. Jeff Saturday takes over for the Colts, and they get a W in their first game. So just something to think about. I've already put money on the Broncos. As ugly as this sounds, being 13.5-point dogs, just against the spread, I'm not taking them out right here, but the numbers certainly favor taking the interim head coach. It just kind of juices up the team a little bit. We saw in that game against the Rams, it looked like that defense kind of quit. We saw the offensive linemen fighting with Brett Rippon. Why is a backup quarterback fighting with the offensive lineman? That shows the just complete dysfunction that the Broncos had. And I think that with Nathaniel Hackett out of there, they're going to want to be able to, they're going to just be out there motivated. And again, especially this late in the season, The Broncos, they know they have nothing to play for. So shit, let's play for this coach. And a lot of times it works out. I mean, the numbers show it that it's a good bet to take that interim, or that team that's got an interim head coach coming in, at least the first week. Nothing beyond the first game, okay? But that first game with the interim head coach, numbers suggest it might be worth betting on. So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna recommend the same thing. I've already done it, I should say, and I'm looking forward to cashing in on this one.
I like it. My first game up on the slate, it's going to be Dolphins at Patriots, two teams that have been struggling a little bit lately, but are still fighting for a final playoff spot. Dolphins looking to right the ship and going to be probably without Tua. I cannot imagine he's going to be playing after picking up his third concussion. We talked about that.
I hope yesterday. Not, man.
There's no way.
I hope not.
But Dolphins on the road here in New England, going to be cold. And yeah, like I said, I want to see if the Dolphins are able to get that offense going with Teddy Two Gloves back there coming into the game. And we'll see. Expect a lot of running back action in this one. Ramondre is probably going to have a big game for the Patriots and probably get your Mostert and Jeff Wilson Jr. fired up for Miami in this one with Teddy B behind the helm. And of course, everyone's favorite quarterback, Mac Jones, leading the Patriots.
It's just shocking with Mac Jones how few amount of times, how many chances does your average starting quarterback even have to make a dirty play? Like in an entire season. And he's done it 2 weeks in a row. Once this past week when he rolled up on Eli Apple 10 yards behind the play, which ended up being a pick six. Just running on the sideline. Eli Apple's following his guy, and he just dives into Eli Apple's knees. Like, that's such a dirty play. That's not a competitive play. That's just a frustration play, dirty play. Reminds me of Grayson Allen.
I was just gonna say he must have been learning from the Grayson Allen playbook.
And then the week before that, there was a fumble, and he did there were no replays, but he did something to warrant 3 refs throwing flags at him after a fumble was recovered by the defense. So that's 2 weeks in a row where he's made dirty plays. Like, I get that you're frustrated, but this guy's he's gonna have a target on his back now going forward, because you can't just get away with that. I think this Miami defense might just completely tee off on this guy. I think it's honestly, you mentioned it. You think it'll be a heavy dose of Ramondre Stevenson for his safety? I sure hope so, because that Patriots defense that Miami defense is they're not gonna play nice with him. And I don't think any defense is going to for the rest of this season, unless he learns his lesson, which may end up being a torn ACL at some point. So hopefully for his safety, it is a Ramondre Stevenson, Jeff Wilson Jr. show. I think this game is going to be extremely ugly, but do you give the edge here to Miami, even with Teddy Two Gloves in New England in this weather? I mean, Teddy's lack of arm strength, that might be a factor here in this cold, and you assume windy, shitty weather in Boston.
Yeah, I don't know. I probably give the edge maybe to the Dolphins just with that run game, and you have Tyreek Hill. He's going to be blazing past people that Teddy just needs to get the ball up to him. I don't know. If you're Miami, you're prepping in practice all week just to shut down Ramondre Stevenson and make Mac Jones beat you. And I think ultimately, if they're able to do that, they're going to win the game, because Mac Jones is not going to win you the game. So I think I would lean the Dolphins in this one, in a close one.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, this game right now, there is no line on it, given that we don't know the status of Tua.
Yeah.
But so can't even give you any advice there. But oh man, this might be ugly if it's Teddy versus a Mac Jones that's going to have missiles going after him. I'm going to jump over to another playoff matchup. Well, two teams fighting for the playoffs. The Jets at the Seattle Seahawks. Both teams, I mean, if they lose this game, they're out. I don't know if that's mathematically correct, but it's at least theoretically correct.
Visually correct.
It is correct. Okay, so they're both
visually correct.
Visually correct.
It's like there's no way.
Yeah. Both teams right now are 7 and 8.
Yep.
Going into this week 17. Obviously, they have one more game after this with the additional 17th game, but still, if whoever loses this game is going to be 7 and 9, that feels like it makes it feel like it's basically an elimination game. And it's too bad that one of these two teams we know after this game isn't going to make the playoffs, because they've been really great stories. The Jets, Mike White, they're two right now. Oh, exactly. Mike White. If I could be Mike White. Right now, Garrett Wilson is the favorite for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Sauce Gardner is going to walk away with Defensive Rookie of the Year. It's been just a really sweet turnaround for the Jets, going from where they have been just complete mediocrity into a genuinely relevant team. And then the Seahawks, we thought they had a shot for the number 1 overall pick after that Russell Wilson trade. Turns out they're in great shape with at least with Geno. I mean, Kenneth Walker's been awesome. Lockett, DK Metcalf, you kind of would have thought maybe they would want out, but they've had really nice years. Obviously, Lockett's out with that injury. But, it's just two great stories, and it's too bad that one of them is going to end up missing out on the playoffs more than likely after this game.
No, this is one I had written down as well, and I'm glad to see Mike White back. At least the Jets offense will somewhat resemble an offense after what we saw last week on Thursday Night Football. And yeah, the Seahawks are a very nice story. So are the Jets, like you'd mentioned, but ultimately one of these teams is going to have their playoff hopes linger into week 18, and the other one is going to be looking towards the offseason after this one. And very well, the winner of this one could also be looking at the offseason after next week too, but they'll at least live another week to see what their fate is. But no, Seahawks, I mean, if you're a Seahawks fan right now, this is all just kind of house money right now. You thought the season was lost at the beginning of the year. You traded away your franchise quarterback, stocked up on draft picks, rolling with Geno Smith, Drew Lock, having a quarterback battle essentially in training camp to find out who the starter was. And Geno Smith is a Pro Bowler this year. Geno Smith has been very sufficient. He's looked solid at times. I mean, he's struggled a little bit the last couple of weeks coming back down to earth, but you got to like where you're at with the Seahawks. You've got tons of draft picks coming up. I mean, Denver's going to give you a top 5 pick probably. And yeah, the future's bright in Seattle. The biggest question for them, I think, though, is what to do, I guess, with Geno, because you might not have a high pick again, depending if Denver can turn it around next year, depending on what Seattle does. Where is Geno the long-term answer? That's probably their biggest question heading into the offseason, is if you have a high pick right now with 3 quarterbacks that are highly touted, at least right now, is this the year to pull the trigger on a quarterback, or do you roll with Geno again?
It'll be interesting. I mean, obviously, with all the capital that Seattle got in that Denver trade, do they package some of that and try to flip with Houston to get to that number 1 spot? Because you could throw Bryce Young into that off. I mean, in theory, you can franchise tag Geno, move up to that number 1 spot, grab yourself Bryce Young, or stay at 3 and grab Will Levis, who he's a project, but which might make a little bit more sense if you're going to franchise tag Geno. But that's something that Seattle could they have the capital to move up to that number 1 spot. And Bryce Young, really kind of Russell Wilson 2.0, like at least a young Russell Wilson in terms of mobility, in terms of just having a nice arm. Pretty similar in size. I mean, Russell's a little bit thicker, came into the league a little bit thicker. Bryce Young's really small. And that's a little bit of a worry for me. But if you surround him with the offensive line that Seattle has shown that is very legit this year. I think Bryce could stand a chance. It's an interesting play if you're Seattle right now with that number 3 pick, all that capital thing. You got to think about moving up to 1. Let me jump over to the I'm just glad that we got this as the Sunday night football game. Pittsburgh at Baltimore. It always just feels right.
Yeah.
When this is a Sunday night football game. It's like this is just football. And for a viewership's sake, I really hope that Lamar Jackson is back for this one. We kind of thought that he was going to be back this past week. I clearly did by taking Mark Andrews for my Drew Lock tight end.
Attaboy.
Woo. So hopefully he's back for our sake, but Pittsburgh's won their last 2 games. And goodness gracious, Mike Tomlin at 7-8 right now. He's got a chance to extend that streak where he's never finished a season under 500. I can't believe I'm saying that, but he could actually do that given how shaky Baltimore has looked these last few weeks. Again, that's without Lamar, but Baltimore looked really solid to start the season and then but they just found ways to lose games. Obviously, these last few weeks, it's been Tyler Huntley, who magically ends up as the 4th alternate at quarterback for the Pro Bowl. Lamar's the 3rd alternate. So those Ravens fans came out to vote, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. Jeez.
Insane. But I don't know. It feels good. This always Sunday night football, Ravens, Steelers. It just feels right, especially late in the year. Like, there's something satisfactory about that. So it's just one of the games. Pittsburgh does still have an outside chance as well at making the playoffs. So there are playoff implications in this one. Baltimore still has a chance at that division as well with Cincy. So playoff implications, Sunday night football, Steelers, Ravens. It just feels good, man. It feels like the end. It feels like winter football.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. That's 100% winter football. We've had some awesome matchups from these 2 teams over the years as well. It's amazing that Pittsburgh is at 7-8 right now with the quarterback situation that they've had with Mitch Trubisky looking just awful and Kenny Pickett just kind of finding a way to learn in his first year. So I ultimately think the future is bright in Pittsburgh. I mean, with a 7-8 record with a rookie quarterback and Trubisky kind of alternating, future's bright. So I like it. And again, it's nice that this one's on Sunday night. I think we had like a noon matchup that we were complaining about a couple of weeks back from these 2 teams. So it's nice seeing them back in the spotlight on Sunday night.
And how many people ended up watching that?
Probably not a lot.
Not a whole lot. So it just feels good to have them back,
Yep. Easy game of the week for me this week is the Monday night matchup. Buffalo at Cincinnati, 2 teams that are 1-3 right now in the current playoff seedings. Got Buffalo in 1, followed by Kansas City, and then Cincinnati. With Cincinnati's only a game back. And by head-to-head matchups, with a win over Buffalo, could jump into that number 1 spot. They already beat the Chiefs a couple weeks back and can show that, hey, we're still cream of the crop right now in the AFC. We are the defending Super Bowl runner-up, winners of the AFC Championship last year, and we're here to stay. So this ultimately is huge for them. For number 1 seed is not even close to being locked up in the AFC. So we'll see what happens in this one. But 2 offenses that are just absolutely rolling right now. Buffalo coming off of a dominant performance against the Bears. Josh Allen looked solid. James Cook looked solid. The run game. And Cincinnati, Joe Burrow's been on a tear lately as well, and Cincinnati's been winning ball games. So this one is going to be a doozy on Monday night, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, what really surprised me about last week's game with Cincinnati and New England was the fact that Cincy couldn't close that game out. And that gives, their running game prior to last week has looked really good between that Mixon and Samaje Perine duo. But last week against New England, you'd think that they would be able to close that game out, just run the ball and let's kill clock. And then the Patriots storm back and Cincy ended up only getting a 4-point win when they were up 3 touchdowns. Of course, Evan McPherson missing, I believe, 3 extra points in that New England win didn't help. But I mean, I think that run game is going to be, it's certainly going to be less of a concern in this game, because I think we're looking at a really high scoring matchup between two teams that just the best thing they do on offense is throw the ball. Burrow, obviously he's got his weapons in Chase, Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Mixon also out of the backfield, Josh Allen, stud in the run game, as well as him throwing to Diggs. Gabe Davis has come on pretty strong. Diggs has fallen off a little bit. Fantasy failure for me and for the end of the season. My
playoffs last week with him not doing well. Yeah.
But we've seen some nice glimpses out of Gabe Davis, Dawson Knox as well. So I think we're seeing these defenses shut down Diggs a little bit and make Josh Allen spread the ball out a little bit more. I mean, it's an amazing game. And yeah, this is whip it out time to say, we are the dominant team in the AFC. And I got to give the edge to Cincy here. I think that Cincinnati is the best team in the AFC. Just the way that they played and defeated the Chiefs. We've seen Buffalo in clutch moments kind of fold a little bit. They've been on a nice winning streak, but they've also had some close games that really shouldn't have been close. Josh Allen has, over the last we're looking at like 2 months now where Josh Allen has not thrown the ball that well through the air. He's really low in a number of categories. Obviously, his legs are a massive threat to any defense, but I think Cincinnati's the best team in the AFC, if not the best team in the NFL. And I got to give Cincy the edge here. I mean, where do you lean on this one?
Yeah, I like Cincy in a home matchup here. I think ultimately, if it was in Buffalo, I probably would have leaned Buffalo a little bit more. But home game for Cincinnati, Monday Night Football. I like this a lot, and I think Cincy's going to have too much firepower on offense and ultimately come away with the win.
All right, I got a game here, which I think is maybe the best of the NFC for this weekend, and that's going to be Minnesota at Green Bay. This game is obviously for all the marbles for Green Bay. If they lose this game, they lose all their marbles. So in terms of at least making the playoffs, simple. Straightforward. God, did you ever play Moncala?
Yes.
Oh, hell yeah. That game was awesome. I used to be addicted to that one. Speaking of marbles. But no, we kind of briefly previewed this game in the last episode, but Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers, 3:30 game, clutch time for Kirk Cousins versus clutch time for Aaron Rodgers. That Minnesota defense as a whole has been quite porous this year. Although Green Bay's run defense hasn't been anything special either. I mean, Dalvin Cook against this defense. Yes, Dalvin Cook, at least fantasy-wise, numbers-wise, has not been the same guy that he had been in previous years, but he still shows those occasional bursts when he can be awesome. Also, and on top of that, you got Alexander Mattison, who's he's got nice bursts as well. I'm most interested, though, to see what defensive adjustments do the Packers finally, if they're ever going to do it, make against Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson, J squared, has just torched the Packers every single time that he's played them. After the last game, Jair Alexander was pretty vocal about basically saying, why the hell am I not just shadowing this guy? He didn't say it that way, but implied that. So I'm wondering, I'm looking forward to seeing if Jair Alexander, one of the top 5 corners in the NFL, does end up shadowing Justin Jefferson. I think that's the only chance that the defense, that Packers defense has against him, because he's gone off for 200 plus yards against them multiple times. And now he's going for that Viking. He's already surpassed Randy Moss for that Vikings total yards record in a season and receptions. Now he's just looking to obliterate that. He's looking to get to that 2,000 yard mark. And it's the Viking. He's clearly, obviously, the Vikings' biggest weapon. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what that Green Bay defense does if they do focus Jair on him. Because if they don't, we might be seeing another ugly game.
Yeah. And he's going, I believe he's just under 220 yards away from that all-time record of Calvin Johnson's receiving record in a season. Granted, Calvin Johnson did that on a 16-game schedule as opposed to the 17 that they have nowadays. But yeah, I am curious. I don't know. We really haven't seen a ton of teams shut down Justin Jefferson. I mean, shutting him down is pretty much just keeping him out of the end zone at this point. I mean, he's going to put up 80 yards. I mean, that's just who he is at this point in time. He's an elite route runner and great speed and just a fantastic wide receiver. But yeah, this one, ultimately, we'll see what Green Bay is able to do. I think they need to establish the run early in this one, and Aaron Rodgers has to play better than he's played so far this season. Minnesota's defense isn't great. They've been in close games. We saw the New York Giants and Daniel Jones almost come away with a victory in Minnesota last week, and Green Bay needs to come out firing in this one. I think ultimately this is the game that Minnesota slips up, but I do see Green Bay winning this one in a close one at home and keeping their playoff hopes alive, and have the date with the Detroit Lions, who are playing the Bears this week, and will probably win that one. And maybe we'll see the Lions flexed into an NBC Sunday Night Football game with the playoff spot.
How about that? Goodness, good golly, Miss Molly.
My last game I want to throw out there quick before we get into our Drew Locks. Don't have a lot to say about it, but battle of the crap division in the NFC South, Carolina at Tampa Bay. This one, the winner of this one has an inside track to claim that division title, and Panthers knocked off the Bucs a little bit earlier on in the season, and I believe they might be able to clinch that division with a win, depending on, I think, the Saints, what they do. But no, this one, Buccaneers looking for some revenge. That game, I know we had fantasy implications on the Arizona-Tampa Bay game, but man, if Tampa Bay doesn't get that run game going, Tom Brady has not looked good outside of that 2-minute offense that you had mentioned yesterday, Jel. Do you see Carolina coming away with another victory in this one, or do you think old-time Tom gets his revenge in this one?
JC Horn is out.
Yeah, he's out
for Carolina, and that is a massive blow.
But they got Josh Norman.
Possibly signing Josh Norman, 35-year-old Josh Norman, who's been out of the league. It's got to be at least
San Francisco, right? This is his last stint.
He was in Washington for a couple of years. Did he finish out in San Fran?
I thought he was there for a little bit. I'll look while you keep going.
I mean, either way, he's been out of the league for a while. This game is in Tampa. Carolina on the season is 1-5 on the road. They have looked obviously much more impressive over the last couple of weeks, getting on a hot 1-game win streak, but which is hot for them. But God, it's pathetic that a 6-9 versus 7-8 matchup, that's for the division lead. That's just pathetic. I think I have to sit here and trust Tampa, even though I don't trust their offense. I think it's going to be another ugly game. We just saw this last game against Carolina. They won 19-6, or against Arizona this past week with a 19-16 win. I would not be surprised one bit if we don't see the exact same final.
Yeah. Fun fact, Josh Norman was a San Francisco 49er last year, had 7 forced fumbles, the career high, according to the credible source Wikipedia. But ultimately not enough to get him signed until this moment in time, week 17 of the NFL season in 2022.
Goodness
definitely
gracious.
Not the same shutdown corner that he was back in his early days with Carolina. But obviously Carolina trying to maybe get some old magic back from Mr. Norman.
Let's see if he can do it. I'd love it. I'd love to see that.
Yes.
That'd be fun. Why don't they bring back Cam Newton also? Like,
right. All right, moving into our Drew Locks of the Week. If you're new to the show, welcome in. This is a segment we do during the NFL season. Each week, Jill and I pick a quarterback, wide receiver, running back, and tight end. Once you use a player, you cannot use them again, cannot use the same player as your opponent for that week, and you get whatever fantasy points that quarterback gets. Gel is holding on to his 20-point lead. I did get a couple of decimal points back in this one last week.
I think you're up by 19.9 right
down
now.
By 19. Okay. Yep. And thanks to, in part, Daniel Jones had a solid double-digit performance for me last week in Minnesota. So you're welcome, Joe.
Yeah, that was the pick, the one pick that I completely trashed, and it paid off.
Second highest scorer of the week between our 8 picks that we had.
Of course, the one guy that I was reliant on that I thought was going to bounce back, Mark Andrews, didn't have a starting quarterback when I was really thinking Lamar Jackson was coming back. So womp womp.
Attaboy. Well, it is week 17. You have odd weeks. So, Joe, kick her off.
I'll go first overall with the running back that is facing the worst running defense. My running back theme all year, go against the Texans. And that's going to be Mr. Travis Etienne. He's kind of, he had those couple of weeks also where he had that foot injury, and then a couple of weeks where they weren't giving him the ball 100% of the time. But this past week, he did have 22 rushes. It looks like it's his backfield again, 100%. And he's facing the Texans. So Travis Etienne, lock it in.
I like it. I'll roll with the tight end this week. I'm going to go with Dallas Goedert against New Orleans defense. Not the best of matchups, but I think ultimately he's the best available tight end that I have left to choose from. Burned a lot of the big names early on in the season. So it's going through. This is the best matchup I have right now for this. And definitely somebody that could find the end zone and maybe sneaky get a couple tutties this week. That's what I need to get back into this one.
Tutties.
So going big or going home with Dallas Goedert.
Well, I will stick with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Mr. Evan Ingram, who has been just blazing hot as of late. I like him against the Texans, who have, shocker, not been great against the tight end position. About middle of the road, but I gotta trust Evan Ingram here. He's just been killing it. So gonna roll with him. You had him a couple weeks. What was that? 2 weeks ago?
Last week.
It was last
against
week.
The Jets and had a nice day.
Just balled out. So I gotta get him into my lineup and going 2 Jags here.
Hopefully you go 3 and 4 Jags, Joe. You should go.
Who is
Jags.
That? Is Chad Henne their backup still?
Oh, did you already burn Lawrence?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Dang it. I am going to lock in Dalvin Cook this week. This is my last opportunity to use him because I imagine the Vikings probably won't have a lot to play for next week. So I'm going to get him in a nice matchup against Green Bay. Usually in the past, he's had pretty solid games against Green Bay. So I'm going to stick with that trend and roll out Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, Dalvin was the second. He would have been the guy that I would have rolled with if I didn't have ETN still available. So I'm for it. I still have CeeDee Lamb available as my wide receiver, so I'm going to roll with him. Especially the second half of the year, he's just been hot as a bull. What is the thing they call it that they stab bulls with? Like a bull marker thing, whatever it's called. Where they burn the
branding.
How does a bull brander? CeeDee Lamb.
Classic. I'm going to roll with a wide receiver that has been equally as hot as CD Lamb, and I have not used T Higgins yet. So I'm going to go with T Higgins in a nice points on points matchup against Buffalo on Monday Night Football. So I'm going to roll with T. I already used Jamar Chase. Obviously, like to use Chase, but T Higgins is another solid option, and I expect to have quite a bit of points scored in that one. And I like T Higgins in that.
All right. I'm going to go, obviously last pick here, quarterback, going to go with Jack Goff. Or shoot. I just saw Jay Goff. I assume Jack. Jared Goff against the Bears. Bears defense has been very bad. And Jared, not Jack. Goff had a really nice week last week against Carolina. So I like that momentum. They're obviously fighting for a playoff spot here. So Mr. Goff, Mr. Goff.
Yeah, no, Jared Goff's a nice pick in this one. The only way he's not going to have a big day is if he goes down with an injury, because it's going to be ugly. And I
bloodbath.
Expect a lot of points from both quarterbacks in this one. Justin Fields had been a very nice pick to have available, but obviously you and I both used him during his hot streak during the middle of the season. So with that, I do have kind of a big name going still, and I am going to stack T Higgins, signal caller, thrower of the ball, Joe Burrow. So wow. I have not used Joe Burrow yet. So again, same reason with T Higgins. I expect a lot of points in this one, and Joe Burrow leading the way passing, and we'll stack him and T Higgins in hopes stacking the odds against you, Gel, and climbing back into the race.
Okay, first off, nice, well done. And I like these names that we still have left. We're not, it's a lot better than the bye weeks when we were just, picking at the bottom of the barrel trying to find guys, but we've got some really nice names here. I mean, these are 8 starters.
Yep.
And on just about any fantasy team. These could be 8 starters on any playoff team for fantasy.
And some of these guys too are ones that the matchup might not be the greatest, but looking ahead, I mean, we have 2 weeks left. So if you don't use them now, it's maybe you look at next week and then you're looking at matchups and stuff. So just kind of picking the better of the matchups, but yeah, kind of surprising, but yeah, we've got 8 guys, like you said, that are going to put up some points this week.
Big time.
That'll do it for this episode. We can be found at Dead Arm Sports, Twitter, Instagram. Check us out on Facebook at Dead Arm Sports. Go to YouTube, subscribe to our page, Dead Arm Sports. Click that bell. That way you know when our live episodes drop. We monitor that chat. You can ask us any questions there. Joe can be found at DosGel. I can be found at DosJPEG, at Dead Arm Sports on all of our socials. Subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your favorite listening platform. You'll get some swag if you send us a screenshot, folks. Gel, what are those platforms?
Hit us up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Google Pods. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review to whatever your chosen listening platform is. Take a screenshot of that written review. Send it to us on our social media pages at Dead Arm Sports on Twitter or Instagram, or on our Facebook page, which you can find just by searching Dead Arm Sports. Find us on YouTube, as mentioned, just by searching Dead Arm Sports.
Whoa, really?
Whoa! Subscribe there as well. Hit that bell so that you get all of your notifications, or all of our notifications. Tons of free content out there, so just enjoy it, soak it up, and enjoy your New Year's holiday.
Yeah, everyone enjoy. Have a safe and happy New Year's. Enjoy all the wonderful bowl games and NFL slate of games this weekend. I know I will be doing that, kicking my feet up, hopefully, and watching some foosball. Gel, close her out.
Best of luck to all you fantasy players out there that are in your championship games, such as yours truly out there. Cue the fireworks. Pew, 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 pew.